Bruin fans released a sigh of relief as Jeremy Swayman signs on the dotted line. Ian McLaren is here to talk about what it means for the team and where we go from here. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The big news in Boston, goalie Jeremy Swayman finally ends his holdout, signs a new contract. Ian McLaren of Locked On Bruins here to talk about that. And Ian, how important was it for the Bruins to get this done?
I mean, it's huge. It was great to wake up Sunday morning, see the Bruins had posted a video of Swayman returning to the rink, pulling his hockey bag and his sticks out of his trunk. And with, of course, the trade of Linus Ullmark to the Ottawa Senators, having Swayman in the fold for the next 8 years, it's a signal that they are committing to a franchise goalie, and he has proved up to this point that he's up to the task. To go into the season with Joonas Korpisalo and an AHLer as backup with a pretty tough schedule to start would have been really tough. But to get Swayman back in the lineup before opening night, really huge for the Boston Bruins and the fans, of course.
Talk to me about the terms. Do you think this was a fair deal for both sides?
I do at the end of the day, yeah. I had always said that I thought he would come in around this range. It's the exact same contract that New York Islanders goaltender Ilya Sorokin signed last summer. Sorokin's a bit older. Sorokin does have a Vezina runner-up to his name. But if you look at save percentages among goaltenders who have played at least 100 games since Jeremy Swayman debuted, he's fourth in save percentage among that group, behind only Linus Ullmark, Igor Shesterkin, and Sorokin. So he belongs definitely among the highest paid goalies. He's now behind only Andrei Vasilevsky, Sergei Bobrovsky, Connor Hellebuck, and now tied with Sorokin for the highest AAV. Carey Price is in there as well, but he's not an active goaltender. And over the course of this deal, I think it will age very well for the Boston Bruins. There's going to be some guys, Shesterkin among them, who will be due new contracts, and it's very possible that, or likely even, that by the end of this deal, 8.25 for Jeremy Swayman could be very team-friendly, in fact. So, I always assumed he would end up in this range, and based on his track record, based on what we saw in the playoff run just a few months ago, he is certainly up to the task. Obviously, a lot of people say, well, he hasn't had that A1 job just yet. I mentioned Ullmark being tops in save percentage over the past few seasons. But every time Jeremy Swayman has been in the net, you can see the kind of goalie that he is, that unfazability. And there's every reason to believe that he will remain a top high-end goalie in the NHL and help the Bruins to achieve their goals moving forward.
What does this mean psychologically in that locker room? I mean, the team struggled through the preseason without him.
Yep.
How does this affect the team psychologically?
I mean, it's huge. You can say, it doesn't affect them, or there's no impact during the preseason because it's kind of meaningless hockey. But you had some big time free agents that were signed this summer. You have commitments to core players like David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, and those guys kind of all came into this season with the belief that Jeremy Swayman would be the goaltender as part of this core moving forward. If he were to have been traded or this stalemate had lasted past December 1st and he sat out all season, obviously that would be demoralizing for the team. And especially once the regular season got going. Joonas Korpisalo is still penciled in as the opening night starter to give Swayman some time to get back into the swing of things. But clearly it's a different mindset when you have an elite high-end goalie in Jeremy Swayman in net, or your second, third, even fourth option on the depth chart. So the guys probably won't say that publicly, but obviously it has to be a relief for everybody in the locker room for sure.
How much time do you think he'll need to be ready to play his first game? And does he get brought along slowly where Korpisalo may split time with him early on?
Possibly, yeah. I believe he has been keeping up with some on ice activities at one of the area universities with former Bruin Jay Pandolfo. So it's not like he's coming in extremely cold. Obviously, he doesn't have the game reps from the preseason or even NHL practice reps. The Bruins start the season on the road, and then they host the Montreal Canadiens in their home opener. And then they have a couple afternoon games next weekend, Canadian Thanksgiving weekend. So probably one of those games that you'll see him back in the lineup, maybe as early as Saturday, October 12th against the Kings, or maybe a Monday, October 14th game against the Florida Panthers. Maybe he gets in and makes his debut, the home opener against the Canadiens on Thursday. I guess maybe it'll depend on how Korpisalo performs in the season opener against the Florida Panthers, where the Panthers will be raising their banner. Emotions will be high, I'm sure. So all that to say, he's not coming in, frozen. He's coming in fairly warm, ready to go, and shouldn't take him too long to get into the swing of things, although there are some new faces in the lineup, some new guys on defense. So getting everybody on the same page might take a few days at the very least.
So you cross this off your to-do list if you're the Boston Bruins. What are the keys to a successful season this year for this team?
Well, they've definitely improved defensively as a team. And all throughout this stalemate, I've heard over and over again, well, it doesn't really matter who's in net for the Bruins because their defense is so good. But if you look at their overall team defense last season, it wasn't really that spectacular. It was below 50% in terms of shot attempts, shots per game. The goaltending tandem of Ullmark and Swayman really bailed them out on a lot of occasions last year. They bring in Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov. That improves the team defense. I think it really comes to tightening things up defensively and getting at least average goaltending from Korpisalo in the games that Swayman can't go. I would expect Swayman will probably get 2 out of every 3 starts. And those games that Korpisalo comes in, he needs to be at least serviceable after a very poor season last year with the Ottawa Senators, so that there's not too much pressure. Even if you're a 1A goalie in the NHL today, it's not back in the day when a guy like Martin Brodeur would start 70 games kind of thing. So you do need that backup, and getting Korpisalo to that level is going to be key for this team as well.
Out of all the newcomers, whether they be prospects or guys that you acquired, who do you think will have the biggest impact on the team?
I think it's going to be Lindholm at the end of the day. We've heard a lot about him being in the same mold of a Patrice Bergeron. The Bruins got a lot out of Pavel Zacha and Charlie Coyle at center last season, but to be able to pivot Zacha to the wing and put Lindholm on a line with David Pastrnak, I think that's really going to give him a big boost after a pretty rough season last year, Lindholm, between Calgary and Vancouver, and open things up even more for David Pastrnak, maybe to get back more to raising those goal totals. Last year, he was having a big playmaker role. So to be able to have Pasta kind of more as a finisher and challenging again for 50, 60 goals, that would be big for them. And just it helps the depth all the way down the lineup to have a guy like Lindholm in there as well. So I think he'll be pretty key for the Bruins this season.
All right, Ian, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Locked On Boston Bruins, available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. The podcast is at Locked NHL Bruins on social media, and people can find me at Ian C. McLaren.
Ian, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Yep, always great to catch up, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can hire quality candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.